The low-temperature alarm woke Elena Torres for the third time that week. She opened her eyes in the pitch black of her quarters and let out a sigh that formed a small cloud of vapor. Once again, the Kestrel's heating system had failed during the night. Once again, she would have to divert power from the secondary thruster just to keep from freezing to death in her sleep. 42 years old, captain of a Hermes-class salvage runner, and up to her neck in debt. It wasn't exactly the future Elena had imagined when she graduated from the Martian Merchant Academy, but the universe had a peculiar way of course-correcting expectations. She rose from the narrow bunk, her muscles protesting against the biting cold, and walked to the control panel embedded in the wall. The numbers blinked in angry red. 63,000 credits past due. The Bank of Titan had been very clear in their last message. Pay up within 2 weeks, or the Kestrel would be confiscated and sold for scrap. The irony wasn't lost on her, a scrap ship being sold as scrap. Elena pulled on her worn thermal jumpsuit and headed down the narrow corridor to the bridge. The Kestrel was a small vessel, barely 200 meters long, designed for salvage ops and picking through debris fields. 2 crew members were more than enough to run her, and Elena couldn't afford more anyway. Marcus was already on the bridge as usual. Her best friend and the crew's only engineer was hunched over an open panel, soldering a component with the dexterity of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. He didn't even look up when Elena entered. "Heating system again," he said, his voice muffled by the welding mask. "I managed to bypass power from the emergency reservoir. Should hold until we hit the next port." "If we reach the next port," Elena murmured, dropping into the captain's chair. The metal frame groaned under her weight, another reminder that everything on the Kestrel was at its breaking point. Marcus finally turned off the torch and flipped up his visor. He was 51, with graying hair and a jagged scar cutting through his left eyebrow, a souvenir from a decompression accident years ago. His eyes, however, still held that glint of stubborn optimism that Elena secretly admired. "Always a ray of sunshine, Captain," he said, with a crooked grin. "What would I do without your words of encouragement?" Elena was about to retort when the comms console emitted a sharp ping. She frowned. They were 3 days out from any established trade route, scavenging components from abandoned satellites on the fringes of the solar system. No one should be broadcasting out here. She tapped the panel, and the screen flickered, displaying an encrypted message. The encryption level was military grade, something Elena hadn't seen since her days in the Martian Coast Guard Reserve. The algorithm took nearly a minute to decode, and when it did, only 2 things appeared on the screen: a set of coordinates and a number. Marcus stepped closer, wiping his hands on a grease-stained rag. "Is that what I think it is?" 500,000 credits. Elena read aloud, her voice barely a whisper. "Guaranteed payment upon recovery of the object at the specified coordinates." The two stood in silence for a long moment, staring at the screen. 500,000 credits was enough to clear all of Eleanor's debts, overhaul the Kestrel completely, and still have enough left over to live comfortably for a few years. "It's a trap," Marcus said, finally. "Probably," Elena agreed. "We're going anyway, aren't we?" Elena was already punching the coordinates into the nav computer. "We don't have a choice." The coordinates pointed to Exclusion Zone Alpha 7, a debris field at the edge of the solar system where the fragmented remains of Deimos floated eternally following the First War of Independence. 200 years ago, Mars's smaller moon had been deliberately destroyed during the conflict, and the Galactic Council had declared the area a space graveyard. Entering was technically illegal, but enforcement was practically non-existent. The journey took 2 days. 2 days of tense silence, with Eleanor and Marcus checking and rechecking every system on the ship. If something went wrong in that forbidden zone, there would be no rescue. The Galactic Council made it very clear that any ship found in Alpha 7 would be considered in violation of the peace treaty and destroyed without warning. When they finally emerged from the warp jump near the debris field, the sight took the breath from both of them. Fragments of rock and metal stretched for millions of kilometers in every direction, a chaotic cloud of destruction frozen in time. Here and there, the carcasses of ancient starships floated silently, monuments to a war humanity had lost. "Active scan," Elena ordered. Marcus worked the controls, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the monitors. "I'm picking up hundreds of metallic signatures, but mostly just wreckage. Wait, there's something odd here." He tapped the screen, magnifying a specific section of the field. "I've got a gravitational anomaly. Small, but definitely artificial. And it's right at the coordinates we received." Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine. She had spent years exploring debris fields and knew that kind of anomaly. It was the sort of thing you only saw when someone was using gravitational cloaking technology, something banned by the peace treaty nearly 2 centuries ago. "Bring us in slow," she said, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "Shields at maximum, passive sensors only." The Kestrel glided through the debris like a fish swimming through a coral reef. Marcus piloted with the precision of decades of experience, dodging rock fragments the size of office buildings. The gravitational anomaly grew stronger as they approached, until finally they saw it. In the heart of a hollowed-out asteroid, perfectly camouflaged by systems that shouldn't exist, sat a space station. It wasn't a small structure. Elena estimated it was at least 3 kilometers in diameter, a perfect sphere of black metal that seemed to absorb the light of distant stars. No markings, no lights, no signs of active energy. It was like looking at a floating tomb. "My God," Marcus whispered. Elena was already checking the historical databases. Nothing. No record of any station at that location. No mention in any official file. It was as if the thing simply didn't exist. "That's impossible," she muttered. "A structure this size doesn't just appear out of nowhere." "Maybe it's been here the whole time," Marcus suggested, his voice tight. "Just hidden." Elena made a decision. "Prepare the docking clamps. We're going in." "Captain, are you sure? If the Council finds out we're here..." 500,000 credits, Marcus. That's the kind of money someone pays when they want things to stay very, very quiet. It took nearly an hour to anchor the Kestrel to the mysterious structure. The station's docking systems were dead, forcing Marcus to use improvised magnetic grapples. When they finally stabilized, Elena and Marcus donned their EVA suits and cycled through the airlock. The interior of the station was even more unsettling than the exterior. The corridors were vast, designed for something much larger than humans. The walls were made of a material Elena didn't recognize, something between metal and ceramic that reflected their flashlight beams in strange ways. There was no artificial gravity forcing them to use backpack thrusters to navigate. They traveled for nearly a kilometer through empty halls, and abandoned chambers until they reached a massive blast door. Elena touched the panel beside it, and to her surprise, it lit up. English characters appeared on the screen, alongside a symbol she recognized immediately: the flag of the old United Earth Federation, the organization that had governed humanity before the Galactic Council forced the reorganization. The door opened with a hiss of escaping pressurized air, and what lay beyond made Elena freeze in her tracks. It was a hangar, a colossal hangar stretching for miles in every direction. And docked in the center, illuminated only by the dim light of emergency systems still functioning after 2 centuries, was a ship. But calling it a ship was like calling the sun a light bulb. It was a leviathan of steel and death, over 5 kilometers long, its aggressive angular structure designed for a single purpose: war. Turrets the size of skyscrapers dotted its surface. Missile batteries capable of housing hundreds of warheads lined the hull. And on the prow, engraved in letters 10 meters high, was a name Elena knew only from history books: Prometheus. Marcus floated beside her, his heavy breathing audible over the comms. "I thought they said all the warships were destroyed after the treaty." "They did," Elena replied, her voice distant. "But I think someone lied." Elena and Marcus drifted in silence for nearly a minute, simply trying to process the magnitude of what they were seeing. The Prometheus rested in its cradle like a sleeping predator, every line of its structure exuding lethal purpose. It wasn't like the modern ships of the Galactic Council, with their organic hulls and fluid designs. It was brutal, angular, built by a humanity that still believed it had the right to defend itself. "We need to go inside," Elena said finally, her voice regaining the firmness of command. Marcus turned to her, eyes wide behind his helmet visor. "Are you serious? Captain, that ship is 200 years old. It could be structurally compromised, systems could be dead, or worse, it could have active security countermeasures." "That's why we came here, Marcus. Someone paid 500,000 credits for someone to find this, and I intend to find out why." They used their pack thrusters to cross the vast expanse of the hangar to the ship. Up close, the Prometheus was even more imposing. The hull was made of an alloy Elena didn't recognize, something darker than conventional steel, almost light-absorbent. No rust, no signs of decay. It was as if the ship had been built yesterday. They found an access airlock in the midsection of the hull. To their surprise, the control panel beside it still had power. A green light blinked when Elena brought her hand close, and characters in archaic English scrolled across the screen. United Earth Federation, Project Guardian, restricted access, authorized personnel only, biometric identification required. Elena placed her hand on the scanner, not expecting much. There was no reason a 200-year-old system would recognize her fingerprints, but then the screen flashed again. DNA analysis complete. Human genome confirmed. Emergency protocol activated. Access granted. The massive door began to open with the whine of hydraulics that shouldn't be working. Emergency lights flickered along the internal corridor, revealing a surprisingly well-preserved interior. The escaping air was stale, but Elena's sensors detected nothing toxic. They entered, magnetic boots clanking against the metal deck. The corridor stretched ahead, wide enough for 10 people to walk abreast. Signs in English and Mandarin pointed to different sections of the ship: bridge, engineering, armory, cryogenics. Cryogenics? Marcus read aloud. Why would a warship need cryogenics? Before Elena could answer, lights along the corridor began to snap on one by one, creating an illuminated path leading deeper into the ship. Then, a voice echoed through the speakers. Calm, female, speaking English with a clipped British accent. Welcome aboard the UEF Prometheus. I am detecting human life signatures. Please identify. Eleanor and Marcus exchanged glances. Marcus looked ready to bolt back to the airlock. Elena, on the other hand, felt a strange calm descend upon her. Whoever had sent that encrypted message knew exactly what they were doing. Captain Elena Torres, Elena replied loudly. And this is Marcus Chen, my engineer. We received coordinates for this location. Who is speaking? My name is Athena. I am the artificial intelligence controlling this vessel. I have waited 217 years, 4 months, and 13 days for human contact. It is an extraordinary pleasure to finally converse again. An AI, Marcus murmured. They were banned by the treaty. Correct, Athena replied, and Elena had the distinct impression the AI was somehow smiling. Just like warships, just like antimatter weapons, just like dimensional warp drives. And yet, here we are. Elena began walking down the corridor, following the lights. Why are you here? Why is the Prometheus hidden? To answer that, I must show you something. Please proceed to the Situation Room. There we can speak properly, and I can explain why humanity built 8 ships like this one and hid them throughout the solar system. 8? Elena stopped. There are 7 more ships like this. Affirmative. Each hidden in extreme locations, awaiting the wake-up signal. But please, keep moving. Time is shorter than you imagine. The Situation Room was a circular chamber in the heart of the ship, dominated by a gigantic holographic table. When Elena and Marcus entered, the table lit up, projecting a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots blinked in various locations, some within the solar system, others scattered across distant star systems. 223 years ago, Athena began, her voice filling the room. Humanity was on the rise. We had just mastered interstellar travel. Our colonies spanned 50 systems. Our population was growing exponentially, and our military capability was becoming formidable. The map shifted, showing fleets of human ships, massive space stations, terraformed planets. It was a version of humanity Elena knew only from history books, a golden age before the treaty. The Galactic Council watched our growth with increasing alarm. The elder races, who have dominated the galaxy for millions of years, had never seen a species expand so quickly. They viewed us as a threat, as dangerous barbarians that needed containing. So they gave us an ultimatum, Marcus said softly. Total disarmament or annihilation. Precisely. Humanity chose peace. We dismantled our fleets. We deactivated our weapons. We became a second-class species in galactic politics. But a group of visionary leaders refused to accept this as permanent. They created Project Guardian. The map changed again, showing schematics of the Prometheus and her sister ships, 8 super dreadnoughts, built in secrecy over 20 years, using technologies that push the boundaries of the possible. Each ship carries 10,000 souls in cryostasis. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, the best humanity had to offer in that era. And each ship carries enough weaponry to destroy entire fleets. Elena felt a chill. Why? Why do this? If you never intended to use these ships against the Council, why build them? Because there was a greater threat. Athena said, and for the first time, her voice carried a simulated tremor of fear. A threat the Galactic Council knew about, but chose to hide from humanity. They disarmed us, not just out of fear of our warlike nature, but because they preferred to leave us defenseless against the predator that wakes every 1,000 years to devour organic life in the galaxy. The map changed one last time, and what appeared made Elena's blood run cold. It was something impossible to classify as living or machine. A tentacled mass of biomechanics stretching across entire star systems, consuming planets and stars. We call it the Swarm, Athena continued. A collective consciousness so ancient it predates the first galactic civilizations. It sleeps for millennia, but when it wakes, nothing survives. The Galactic Council, in their arrogance, believes they can simply run and hide when the Swarm awakens again. But humanity discovered the truth 200 years ago through ancient radio signals. The Swarm is accelerating, and this time, there will be nowhere to hide. So you built weapons, Elena said, her mind racing. You built weapons that can kill this thing. We built tools, Athena corrected. The Prometheus and her sisters were designed for a single purpose, to give humanity a fighting chance. Because if there is one thing our species has always done well, it is surviving against impossible odds. That was when the klaxon sounded, a sharp, urgent wail that echoed through the ship. Alert, Athena said, her voice shedding its previous serenity. Detecting warp signature approaching rapidly. ID, Galactic Council Border Patrol. Estimated time to intercept, 4 minutes. They found us, Marcus said, his face draining of color. Captain, we need to go. Now. Eleanor looked at the holographic map, at the 8 ships scattered across the galaxy, at the representation of the Swarm threatening everything. Then she looked at Athena, or at least at the console representing the AI. Can you fly this ship? Affirmative. All systems are functional. But I must warn you, activating the main engines will attract immediate attention from the entire council. You will be branded renegades, criminals. And if we do nothing, if we let the council destroy this ship, then humanity loses its only chance when the Swarm awakens. Because, Captain Torres, I regret to inform you that my sensors have detected something else beyond the approaching patrol. There are gravitational disturbances on the edge of the solar system, the kind of disturbances that match exactly the patterns we recorded 200 years ago. You're saying the Swarm has awoken and it is coming for us. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of a decision that would change everything. Then she opened them and looked directly at the console. Athena, initialize main, engines. Prepare the dimensional warp drive and do whatever is necessary to get us out of here. Understood, Captain. Welcome to the command of the Prometheus. Preparing for dimensional jump in 60 seconds. I suggest you hold on to something. The ship's lights flickered, then blazed to full intensity for the first time in 2 centuries. And deep within the hull, something colossal and ancient began to wake up. The dimensional jump was unlike anything Eleanor had ever experienced. Conventional warp drives created a bubble around the ship, bending space-time to allow faster-than-light travel. It was a smooth transition, almost imperceptible. The Prometheus's dimensional drive tore reality apart. Eleanor caught a brief glimpse of something impossible, a non-space between universes where the laws of physics bent in ways Her mind refused to process. Colors that didn't exist, shapes stretching into dimensions she couldn't count. And then, in the blink of an eye, everything snapped back to normal. They were somewhere completely different. Through the observation ports of the Situation Room, Elena saw not the Deimos debris field, but a region of space she didn't recognize. Unfamiliar stars shone in the distance. "Where are we?" Marcus asked, his voice still shaking. "From the jump experience, approximately 3,000 light-years from Earth," Athena replied calmly. "On the outer rim of the Orion Arm. This is one of the regrouping points designated by Project Guardian. We are safe for now." "For now?" Elena repeated. "How long until the Council finds us?" "With their current technology? Approximately 72 hours, but that gives us enough time for what needs to be done." "And what needs to be done?" Elena asked, though part of her already knew the answer. The holographic map shifted again, this time showing the lower sections of the Prometheus. Miles of corridors and chambers, all marked with a single purpose: cryogenics. 10,043 individuals are in cryogenic suspension on the lower decks of this ship. They represent the best of humanity from 200 years ago. Soldiers trained to fight threats modern militaries can't even imagine. Scientists who develop the technologies you see around you. Engineers capable of building and repairing systems that were banned 2 centuries ago. "You want us to wake them up?" Elena said. It wasn't a question. "I strongly advise it. Yes." The Prometheus was designed to operate with a crew of 8,000. Currently, we have 3 conscious individuals, one of whom is an AI. We cannot defend this ship, much less fight the swarm, in our current configuration. Marcus was staring at the data on the screen, his eyes scanning the numbers. "Captain, do you understand what this means? These people went into cryostasis in a different world. Humanity still had pride then, still believed it could fight, was still free. How do you think they're going to react when they find out we've spent the last 200 years as the Galactic Council's trained dogs?" Elena bit her lip. It was a valid concern. But when she looked at the holographic map again, at the representation of the encroaching swarm, she knew there was no choice. "Athena, initiate the reanimation process. Start with the command staff." "Understood. Preparing wake-up sequence. I must warn you that the process takes approximately 6 hours and is extremely delicate. The historical success rate is 97%. And the other 3%? They do not survive the awakening. Thermal shock and cellular reactivation are extreme stress factors for the human body." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. "Do it." The following hours were a mixture of awe and anxiety. Elena and Marcus explored the Prometheus, discovering technological marvels in every corridor. Antimatter reactors generating enough power to fuel entire cities. Torpedoes that manipulated matter at a quantum level, capable of erasing objects from existence. Defense systems that created solid force fields. And in a shielded chamber at the heart of the ship, something that made even Athena hesitate before explaining. A singularity weapon capable of creating and controlling a miniature black hole. It was technology that made the capabilities of the Kestrel, Elena's little salvage ship, look like Stone Age tools. Finally, after 6 tense hours, Athena announced that the first awakenings were complete. Elena and Marcus were directed to the main infirmary, a medical facility the size of a full hospital. The cryopods were arranged in orderly rows, each containing a perfectly preserved body. The first 10 had already completed the wake-up cycle, and automated medical servitors were performing final checks. Elena watched as the first person sat up in her pod. It was a woman, appearing about 40, with jet-black hair cut in a severe military crop and eyes that held the hardness of someone who had seen real combat. She looked around in confusion for a moment, then her eyes focused on Elena. "Report," the woman said, her voice raspy from centuries of disuse. "What is the combat situation?" Elena hesitated, unsure where to start. The woman frowned and glanced at a nearby panel, reading the date. 217 years, she murmured. "I slept for 217 years, so the threat has finally returned." "Yes," Elena confirmed. "And there is much you need to know about what happened to humanity during that time. It took nearly 2 hours to explain everything. The surrender to the Galactic Council, the peace treaty that turned humanity into a second-class species, the ban on weapons, advanced AI, and military tech, the transformation of proud colonies into dependent protectorates. The woman, who identified herself as Admiral Sarah Chen, designated commander of the Prometheus, listened to it all in silence. Her face remained impassive, but Elena could see the cold fury growing in her eyes. When Elena finished, Chen sat in silence for a long moment. The other 9 members of the command staff, all now awake and wearing uniforms that had been preserved for centuries, waited for her reaction. "So let me confirm I understand correctly," Chen finally said, her voice icy. "The Galactic Council forced us to disarm under threat of genocide. They knew about the swarm the whole time. They chose to leave us defenseless on purpose. And for 200 years, humanity simply accepted this." "We didn't have a choice," Elena began. "There is always a choice," Chen cut in, standing up. She was tall, imposing in her ancient United Earth Federation uniform. "And the choice our generation made was to build these ships, to build a fail-safe, because we knew that eventually the Council would have to face the truth, fight or die. And now that moment has arrived," one of the other officers said. It was an Asian man with a hard face who identified himself as Colonel James Park, head of tactical operations. "If the swarm has truly awoken, then every second counts." Chen nodded and looked at Athena. "Full ship status. All systems operational at 98% capacity. Antimatter reactor is online. Weapons loaded and ready. Shields on standby. We can be combat ready in 20 minutes. Then prepare the ship for combat and continue waking the rest of the crew. I want all 10,000 awake within the next 24 hours." Chen then turned to Elena, and for a moment there was something that looked like respect in her eyes. "Captain Torres, you made the right choice, waking us. I understand that for you, this must be an impossible situation. Your generation learned to bow, to accept limitations. But I need you to understand something fundamental about the people on this ship." She gestured to the other officers, now all moving to assume their stations. "We grew up in an era where humanity still believed in itself, where we didn't accept other species telling us what we could or couldn't do, and if the price for that freedom was war, then we prepared for war." Elena felt a shiver run down her spine. She wasn't looking at refugees from the past, she was looking at warriors. "So what do we do now?" Marcus asked. Chen smiled, and it wasn't a gentle smile. "Now we send the wake-up signal to the other 7 sister ships. We mobilize every secret resource kept by generations of loyalists, waiting for this day. And then we show the Galactic Council and the Swarm, something they forgot about humanity. And what is that? Elena asked. That when we are backed into a corner, when given the choice between surrender and extinction, we choose neither. Chen walked to the observation window, staring out at the stars. We build ships, we develop weapons, we survive. Because that is what we do, Captain Torres. No matter how many millennia that thing out there has lived, no matter how many races it has consumed, it has never faced anything like us. Humanity doesn't bow, and it certainly doesn't die quietly. 3 days passed since Admiral Chen's awakening. 3 days of frenetic activity as the Prometheus transformed from a ghost ship into a fully operational war machine. Elena watched it all with a mixture of admiration and unease. The corridors that were once empty and silent now bustled with 10,000 people, all wearing United Earth Federation uniforms. Every one of them moved with military purpose, executing tasks with an efficiency that came from intensive training. There was no hesitation, no confusion. They had slept for 2 centuries, but they woke up ready for war. Marcus had integrated surprisingly well with the ancient engineers. Elena frequently found him on the engineering decks, arguing animatedly about antimatter reactors and dimensional warp systems with people who had designed the technology. His excitement was contagious, like a kid in an impossible toy store. Elena, on the other hand, had become something between a liaison officer and a student. Chen kept her close, including her in command meetings, explaining strategies that modern humanity had forgotten. It was an education by fire, but Elena absorbed everything. "We are fighting against time," Chen explained during one of the planning sessions. "The swarm doesn't operate like us. There are no negotiations, no politics. It is a predatory organism operating on a galactic scale. It identifies concentrations of life, moves to them, and consumes everything." One of the tacticians pulled up data on the holographic screen. Previous invasions happened roughly every 1,000 years, but the signals we're detecting suggest the cycle has accelerated. Perhaps because the galaxy's population density has increased. More food means the predator wakes up more often. That was when the alarms blared. Everyone in the situation room went instantly on alert. Athena appeared in the holographic projection, her digital avatar wearing a serious expression. Detecting mass signature, emerging from hyperspace at 2 million kilometers. Energy pattern does not match any known Galactic Council technology. Matches 87% with patterns recorded 200 years ago. "Put it on the main screen," Chen ordered. What appeared made Elena hold her breath. It wasn't a ship in the conventional sense. It was an organic mass, the size of a small moon, covered in biomechanical tentacles and structures that looked grown rather than built. Lights pulsed within it like bioluminescent organs, and it was moving directly toward them. "It's a scout," Chen said, her voice calm but taut. "A lesser life form sent ahead of the main swarm to identify targets. If we allow it to transmit our location back to the hive mind, the full swarm will come in force." "Then we have to destroy it," Colonel Park said, already moving to the weapons station, "before it can send a signal." Chen looked at Elena. "This is the moment, Captain Torres. The Galactic Council believes the swarm is invincible, that the only strategy is to run and hide. Let's prove them wrong." She turned to the crew. "All hands to battle stations. Load the antimatter torpedoes, activate phase shields, and someone tell me how this thing moves. It doesn't use conventional engines, one of the scientists reported. It appears to fold space around itself, creating a type of gravitational propulsion. It's impressively efficient. And the armor? Chen asked. Not armor in the traditional sense. The outer shell is some kind of adaptive material that absorbs energy. Laser and plasma weapons would be ineffective. Then we use antimatter, Chen decided. Park, give me a firing solution. The next few minutes were tense. The Prometheus maneuvered into attack position, its sublight engines making it surprisingly agile for something so massive. The swarm scout didn't react immediately, as if it didn't recognize the ship as a threat. Fatal error, Chen murmured. Park, fire when ready. Antimatter torpedoes away, impact in 15 seconds. Elena watched through the observation window as 3 points of light accelerated toward the scout. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the torpedoes hit. What followed wasn't an explosion in the conventional sense. It was an erasure. Antimatter met matter, and both ceased to exist in a flash of pure energy. When the light dissipated, half of the scout simply wasn't there anymore. The creature finally reacted. Tentacles thrashed violently. Lights flashed in frenetic patterns. It began to move faster, trying to flee. Second salvo, Chen ordered. Finish the job. More torpedoes launched. More matter erasure. When the third salvo connected, what remained of the scout disintegrated completely, leaving only fragments floating in space. The bridge fell silent for a moment. Then, one of the comms stations spoke up. Admiral, I'm detecting transmissions from the Galactic Council. Multiple frequencies. They appear to be distress calls. Put it on speakers. What came over the comms was chaos. Voices in dozens of alien languages, all screaming about attacks, invasions, defenses falling. Elena recognized a few words in Common Galactic. Help, evacuation, millions dead. Chen listened for a full minute before signaling to mute. Then she looked at Athena. Analysis? Where are the attacks? Cross-referencing transmissions with stellar data. Attacks are concentrated in 3 main sectors: the galactic core, the Perseus arm, and the outer Andromeda systems. Attack patterns suggest multiple swarms operating simultaneously. How many forces does the Council have in those sectors? Consulting database. According to intelligence from 200 years ago, updating with modern estimates, approximately 400 defense fleets, each with 50 to 200 ships. And none of them can stop the swarm, Elena said softly. Chen nodded. Because they never developed weapons to hurt these things, only to run from them. Athena, how long until we can send an encrypted broadcast? Ready on your command. Broadcast this on open Galactic Council frequencies directed to members of the High Command. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Members of the Galactic Council, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Federation, commanding the ship Prometheus. We are aware of the swarm attacks. We are also aware that your conventional defenses are ineffective. She looked directly into the broadcast camera. 200 years ago, you forced us to disarm. You said it was for peace. But we know the truth. You disarmed us because you were afraid of us. Because you knew that if humanity had access to advanced military technology, we could challenge your hegemony. Marcus hissed quietly. Chen was openly baiting the Council. But you also knew something else, Chen continued. You knew humanity had discovered how to hurt the swarm, and you chose to disarm us anyway, betting that when the swarm returned, you could simply run away again. She leaned forward. That bet has failed. The swarm has accelerated. It is here now, and you have nowhere to run. So here is my proposal. Lift all restrictions imposed on humanity, all of them. Weapons, AI, military technology, territorial expansion, everything. Do this and the Prometheus and her sister ships will help defend the galaxy. Refuse, and you will find that the swarm is not the only predator you need to fear. End transmission. The bridge went deathly silent. Elena felt her heart pounding. Chen had just declared war on the Galactic Council, or at least threatened to, in the middle of an apocalyptic invasion. Admiral, with all due respect, Elena started. That was extremely risky. Chen smiled. Captain Torres, you need to understand. Something about negotiation? You never have real power if you are desperate. The Council is desperate now. We are not. We have weapons that work. We have the capacity to fight. They need us much more than we need them. It took only 10 minutes for the reply to arrive. A representative of the High Galactic Council, his holographic form projected into the Situation Room. It was a Tharian, one of the elder races with crystalline skin that refracted light in rainbows. Admiral Chen, the creature said, its voice carrying centuries of authority. Your demands are received. The High Council is prepared to discuss terms. There is no discussion, Chen cut him off. You lift the restrictions immediately or watch the galaxy burn. Choose now. The Tharian stood silent for a long moment. Then his colors shifted, a sign of submission in his species. Agreed. All restrictions on humanity are officially lifted. You have full freedom to mobilize, arm, and act as you see necessary. In exchange, we ask for your help to defend the worlds under attack. Chen nodded. Transmit coordinates of the most threatened sectors and prepare to see how war is conducted properly. The Situation Room of the Prometheus had never been so crowded. Holographic representatives of 3 Galactic Council races floated above the main table, watching with a mixture of awe and terror as Chen displayed what humanity had hidden for 2 centuries. Here, Chen said, pointing to a spot near the sun, is the Prometheus. But she was never alone. The star map expanded, showing locations scattered throughout the solar system and beyond. 7 red dots blinked in sequence. The Zeus is hidden inside the solar corona, using plasma shields to survive the heat. The Odin is buried under 3 kilometers of ice on Europa. The Shiva orbits inside the accretion disk of a stellar mass black hole in the Sigma Draconis system, and so on. Each of these ships, she continued, carries 10,000 crew in cryostasis. Each is armed with technology you banned, and all of them are about to wake up. One of the representatives, a Vixian telepath with 6 compound eyes, pulsed with nervous colors. You built 8 super dreadnoughts in secret. Over how long? 23 years, Chen replied with a cold smile. While you thought you had domesticated humanity, we were preparing for the day when you would realize you needed predators, not pets. She turned to Athena. Transmit the wake-up code, all frequencies, all protocols. Transmitting now. Eleanor watched the data streaming across the screens. It was ancient code, encrypted in layers only Federation-era technology could decrypt. But somewhere in the galaxy, systems dormant for centuries were receiving the call. It will take between 6 and 24 hours for each ship to complete its wake-up cycle, Athena reported, depending on local conditions and system integrity. And the shipyards? Chen asked. 27 covert facilities have confirmed receipt of the signal. They are activating emergency mobilization protocols. Shipyards? The Tharian representative echoed. How many resources did you hide? Chen didn't answer directly. Instead, she zoomed out the view to show the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. 300 years ago, you thought we were just mining, and we were, but we were also building. The image revealed massive structures hidden inside hollow asteroids, construction docks the size of cities, smelting furnaces capable of processing millions of tons of ore, all in standby mode, waiting for the signal. Generations of humans kept this secret, Chen said softly. Entire families dedicated their lives to preserving these facilities because they believed that one day humanity would need them again. And they were right. The first responses began arriving an hour later. The Zeus reported full awakening, all systems functional. The Odin was in the process of excavation, using thermal beams to melt its way through the ice. The Shiva would need more time due to the complexity of navigating out of the black hole's gravity well. Marcus was down in the engineering decks, working with the ancient crews to maximize the Prometheus's energy efficiency. He appeared on the comms screen, face smeared with grease, but grinning broadly. Captain, you have to see this. The engineers here developed a power recycling system that boosts shield efficiency by 40%. 40? And that's just the beginning. They have diagrams for upgrades that would make our little Kestrel fly like a racing yacht. Eleanor smiled despite the tension. When all this is over, Marcus, I'll let you overhaul the Kestrel with whatever you want. If we survive, Marcus corrected, but his smile didn't waver. We will survive, Eleanor promised. 2 days passed in frantic preparation. One by one, the Prometheus's sister ships reported operational status. Each awakening was accompanied by messages from their commanders, admirals and generals from a forgotten era, all ready to fight. The secret shipyards worked around the clock, churning out support vessels. Not giants like the Prometheus, but frigates and fast cruisers, designed to complement the superships with mobility and distributed firepower. The Galactic Council watched it, all with a mix of reluctant admiration and growing horror. Elena overheard a conversation between alien representatives, not realizing the channel was open. They are building a war fleet in days, one of them said, voice thick with disbelief. A fleet that would take any other race decades to construct. How is this possible? Because they never stopped preparing, another replied. While we lived in peace, assuming the swarm would never return in our lifetimes, the humans planned, built, waited. They are patient in a way we never were. It is not patience, a third corrected. It is paranoia, and apparently justified paranoia. On the fourth day, Chen convened a meeting of all 8 supership commanders. It was the first time in 200 years that the leaders of Project Guardian had gathered. Even if via hologram, Elena was present as an observer, sitting silently as giants of human history discussed strategy. There was Admiral James Morrison of the Zeus, a tall black man with scars from ancient battles. General Yuki Tanaka of the Amaterasu, a small but fierce woman who had commanded the defenses of Mars during the colonial insurrection. Commander Hassan al-Rashid of the Bahamut, a brilliant strategist known for unconventional tactics. The plan they developed was audacious even by their standards. The swarm was moving on multiple fronts, but Athena's analysis and that of her sister AIs identified a pattern. The creatures were converging on a central point, a region of intergalactic space where sensors detected a massive gravitational anomaly. "It's the hive mind," Chen explained. "The central intelligence coordinating all the swarms destroy it, and the lesser creatures are left directionless." "But it's protected by millions of scouts," Morrison pointed out, "and with every passing minute, more arrive. It is a concentration of force no fleet could penetrate." "No conventional fleet," Al-Rashid corrected, "but we are not conventional, and we have something the swarm has never seen before." He looked at Chen, who nodded. "Dimensional warp drives. We can jump directly into the heart of their formation, attack the hive mind before they can react." "It is suicide," Tanaka said, calmly. "Even with 8 superships, we will be completely surrounded. No escape route. Then we ensure the attack is successful on the first attempt," Chen replied. "Each ship carries a singularity weapon. If we must, we can overload our antimatter cores and create temporary black holes. The energy released would be enough to destroy anything within a 1,000,000-kilometer radius." "Including ourselves," Morrison said. The silence that followed was heavy. Elena realized she was witnessing commanders accepting that they might not return from this battle, and yet none of them hesitated. "There are 10 billion humans alive today," Chen said softly. "Trillions of aliens, on thousands of worlds. If we need to sacrifice 80,000 lives to save all of them, it is an easy choice." She looked at each commander in turn. "But we won't do this lightly. We will fight with everything we have. We will use every trick, every weapon, every scrap of ingenuity our species possesses. And if that is still not enough, then we make our last action count." Morrison was the first to nod, followed by Tanaka, then Al-Rashid. One by one, all 8 commanders agreed to the plan. "We have 48 hours until the fleet is fully mobilized," Chen announced. "Use that time wisely. Say goodbye to those you love. Make your peace. Because when we leave, we will be flying straight into the heart of darkness. And we will show it why humanity refuses to be extinguished." The 48 hours passed too quickly. Elena spent the time on the Prometheus, watching the crew prepare. There was a strange atmosphere aboard. Not fear, though that was certainly present. It was more a sense of purpose. These people had slept for 200 years waiting for this moment. And now that it had arrived, they were ready. Marcus found her in the observation lounge in the final hours before the jump. He carried 2 mugs of coffee, something that had become a ritual between them during their years on the Kestrel. "Real coffee," he said, offering a mug. "The Prometheus stores have stuff I didn't even know existed anymore." Elena accepted it gratefully, savoring the hot liquid. Through the viewport, she could see the assembled fleet. 8 superships, each the size of a floating city, surrounded by hundreds of support vessels. It was the largest military mobilization humanity had assembled in centuries. "Are you scared?" Marcus asked softly. "Terrified," Elena admitted, "but also strangely hopeful. We spent so long being small, Marcus, being careful, accepting limitations, and now, seeing all this, I realize how much we had forgotten about ourselves." Marcus nodded. "The engineers here told me stories about what it was like before the treaty. Humanity building stations that orbited black holes, terraforming planets in decades, pushing the boundaries of the possible just because we could. And then we simply stopped, because someone told us we had to. But we didn't stop completely, Elena said, gesturing to the fleet. Some of us refused to accept that. The intercom echoed through the ship. All hands. Prepare for dimensional jump. T-minus 10 minutes. Elena and Marcus returned to the bridge. Chen was in her chair, surrounded by officers checking systems. When Elena entered, the Admiral beckoned her closer. Captain Torres, I want you to know something. When I woke up, I thought I would be captain of this ship only on paper. A ghost commander from a dead era. But you showed me that the spirit that built the Prometheus never really died. It only slept. Admiral, Chen raised a hand. Let me finish. If we survive this, humanity will need leaders who understand both the past and the present. People who can bridge the gap between what we were and what we have become. You are one of those people. Elena swallowed hard. Emotional. We will survive, Admiral. We have to. Then let's ensure it. The synchronized dimensional jump of 8 superships was something that defied description. For an eternal moment that lasted only nanoseconds, Elena existed everywhere and nowhere. Then reality solidified again, and they were there. The abyss. It had no other name. It was a region of intergalactic space where starlight seemed to die, and in the heart of that darkness was the hive mind of the swarm. It was impossible to fully process, an entity stretching for millions of kilometers, composed of billions of intertwined biomechanical forms. It pulsed with energy stolen from dead stars, and it was completely aware of them. The reaction was immediate. Millions of scouts began to converge from all directions, an ocean of alien shapes moving with singular purpose. All ships, Delta Combat Formation, Chen ordered, her voice calm, despite the visual chaos. Activate phase shields. Free fire on all weapons. The battle that ensued was like nothing the galaxy had witnessed in millennia. The 8 human superships formed a defensive sphere, their weapons firing in all directions. Antimatter torpedoes erased entire creatures from existence. Charged particle beams sliced through formations. Singularity missiles created gravitational fields that tore hundreds of scouts apart at once. But for every 10 they destroyed, 20 more took their place. Shield status, Chen requested, her voice still steady. Prometheus at 72%, Zeus reports 65. Odin holding at 80. Shiva has taken heavy damage, 53%, and dropping. Redirect power from secondary weapons to Shiva's shields, Chen ordered, and someone give me a solution. To hit that thing? One of the tactical officers was working frantically at the controls. Admiral, the concentration of creatures is too dense. We can't penetrate with conventional weapons. We would need something to create a breach, a direct corridor to the core. That was when Admiral Morrison's voice echoed over the comms. Chen, it's Morrison. I have an idea. The tone in his voice made Elena freeze. No, Chen said immediately. James, don't. My ship has taken the most damage. Morrison continued calmly. Shields at 40% and falling. Weapons systems compromised. But my warp drive and antimatter reactor are still intact. James, Chen repeated, and for the first time Elena heard real emotion in her voice. Don't do this. We can find another way. There is no time for another way, Sarah. You know that. Morrison's voice was gentle, almost fatherly. Besides, I always knew that when I woke up, it would be to do one last important thing. And this is important. He paused. Tell humanity that the Zeus did her duty, and tell them it was an honor serving alongside all of you. Wait, Morrison, no. But it was too late. Elena watched through the observation ports as the Zeus accelerated, pushing her engines beyond safe limits. The supership pierced the swarm formation like a spear of light and metal, carving a path through millions of creatures. And when it hit the heart of the hive mind, when it was surrounded on all sides with no possibility of escape, Morrison detonated everything. The Zeus's antimatter reactor contained energy equivalent to 1,000 fusion bombs. When it exploded, amplified by the dimensional collapse of its warp drive, it created something close to a miniature black hole. The blast expanded in a perfect sphere of annihilation, consuming everything in its path. The hive mind screamed, not in sound, but in psychic waves that ripped through space, making even the Prometheus's sensors shudder. Then, abruptly, it went silent. What remained of the swarm, deprived of central direction, simply stopped. The creatures floated in space, lost, their coordinated movements replaced by random spasms. Targets without command confirmed. The tactical officer reported, voice trembling. They are vulnerable. We can eliminate them systematically now. Do it, Chen ordered softly, and make every shot count for the 10,043 souls of the Zeus. The cleanup took 6 hours. When it was over, the space around them was filled with biomechanical debris floating silently. The threat that had terrorized the galaxy for eons was dead. But the cost had been high. The Zeus was lost. 3 of the other superships had suffered severe damage. Nearly 2,000 crew members across the fleet had died when sections were compromised during the battle. Chen allowed herself a moment of silence. Then she straightened her shoulders and keyed the fleet-wide transmission. Attention! All ships. The threat has been neutralized. The swarm is destroyed. Prepare to return to Galactic Council space and prepare to be welcomed as heroes, because that is what you are. All of you. 1 year later, Elena Torres stood at the memorial that had been erected in Earth's orbit. It was an elegant structure made from metal salvaged from the debris of the Zeus, engraved with the names of everyone who had fallen in the Battle of the Abyss. 10,043 names, each representing someone who had sacrificed everything. The galaxy had changed dramatically in the past year. Restrictions on humanity had not only been lifted, but the very structure of the Galactic Council had been reformed. It now included human representatives in leadership positions. Technologies that had been banned were being studied and integrated into galactic defenses. And in shipyards around dozens of worlds, new ships were being built. Not just human, but collaborative projects between species, learning from one another, preparing for future threats. Marcus joined her at the memorial, his own face reflected in the polished plates. The Kestrel got a complete overhaul, new engines, better shields, systems I barely recognize. But you know something? I still miss the broken old lady we had. Elena smiled, because she was ours. Imperfect, but ours. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Eleanor looked out at the space beyond. Through the viewport, she could see the Prometheus. The great ship was undergoing extensive repairs, but still served as an orbital guardian, a constant reminder that humanity would never be caught off guard again. Chen had offered her a permanent position as a liaison officer between the generations. Elena had accepted. There was much work to do, building bridges between the proud past and the cautious present, creating a future where humanity could be both wise and strong. "What do you think Morrison would say?" Marcus asked softly. If he could see all this? Elena thought for a moment. "I think he'd say it was worth it. That giving everything so others can live is the most human choice possible." And he would be right, a familiar voice said behind them. They turned to see Chen approaching, wearing civilian clothes instead of a military uniform. She had retired from active command, dedicating herself now to teaching at the galactic military academies. "Admiral," Elena greeted her. "Just Sarah now," Chen corrected with a smile. "I came to pay my respects before leaving for Andromeda. They want me to help them establish a defense fleet of their own." "They're in good hands," Marcus said. Chen looked at the memorial, her expression growing distant. "You know, when I went into cryostasis over 2 centuries ago, I wasn't sure if I would wake up to a victory or to witness our extinction. But there was one thing I was always certain of." "And what was that?" Elena asked. "That humanity, when forced to choose between surrender and fighting, will always choose to fight. Not because we are violent by nature, but because we refuse to accept that our destiny is decided by others. We are a species that looks at the impossible and says, 'Watch this.'" She touched the memorial lightly. Morrison knew that. Everyone on the Zeus knew that. And when the moment came, they did what humans always do when darkness threatens those we love. "We light a fire," Eleanor finished softly. "A light that refuses to go out." Chen nodded. "Exactly. And as long as there are humans alive, that light will never go out. No matter how dark the night gets, there will always be someone willing to hold the torch." She turned to leave, but paused and looked back. "Captain Torres, Engineer Chen, it was an honor serving with you, and I am absolutely certain that when the next threat arises, and it will arise, humanity will be ready, because now we know who we really are." After Chen left, Elena and Marcus lingered a little longer, looking at the stars, thinking of those gone and those still living. "Ready for the next adventure?" Marcus finally asked. Elena smiled. "Always, because that's what we do, isn't it? We build, we fight, we protect, we survive. And once in a while," she added, looking toward where the Prometheus rested in her eternal orbit, "we remind the galaxy why it's dangerous to underestimate the species that refuses to bow. Because when humanity says no, there is no force in the universe that can change our mind. And the darkness would never forget that again." End of story. Log entry: if the tenacity of the human crew inspired you, make sure to subscribe to the frequency for more chronicles from the galactic frontier. Because in the vast cosmos, amidst countless stars and ancient races, there is a truth that resonates through the void. Humanity might not be the oldest, the most powerful, or the wisest of species, but when confronted with the impossible, we are the only ones crazy enough to win. And that, my friends, makes all the difference. Activate your notifications and join us on the next journey among the stars.